Well, welcome to almost the end of the day sessions. I hope you've all been enjoying the conference so far, and I want to say thank you so much for coming, and I hope there's water coming because my mouth is getting pretty dry after this very long day. But my name is Angie Jacobs. I am an assistant professor here at Eastern in the Communication Studies Department, and I do a lot of my research in family communication, interpersonal communication, and it's a topic that's really close to my heart, so I'm really excited to come and talk to you today about another very important topic, which is bullying. But obviously, you all know, but we're talking about equipping teachers to handle sometimes what are really difficult conversations when parents want to come in and talk to us about bullying episodes. And one of the things I always tell my students, and I have some students, so I want to say hey and thanks for coming out. I'm communication focused, and we all should be communication focused, and this is what the session really is talking about today, is how do we communicate effectively. We have an axiom in the communication discipline, and it's one cannot not communicate. So if you think about that, what does that mean? One cannot not communicate. I'm sure you've heard this thrown around, maybe in different ways.
Not just words, but you can communicate with your body language.
Yeah. Yeah. So everything that we do is communication, whether it's intentional or not. And so what we're looking at today really is this whole notion of how do we do this effectively with teachers, with parents as teachers. And today I'm speaking to you as not only an educator, but also a parent. And I have spent a lot of years as PTA presidents, PTO presidents. I've been involved. I have 4 children, and they've been through every single grade level you can imagine in Mattoon, Illinois. So I have, my youngest right now is 3rd grade. I have a 5th grader, and then I have a high schooler, and as shocking as it is now, I have a a college freshman, and I don't know how that happened. But I will tell you this, that in the many years that I've had children go through the school systems, we have never been unscathed by bullying. And so I've had to deal with it not only as a parent, but I'm also dealing with it as an educator. Thank you. I will say this, so except for my son, and some of you know my son, he's 15 years old. He's just a large human being. He's 6'3", 270 pounds, and a size 17 shoe. He's never been bullied, right? The other 3 absolutely have. But what, as educators, we need to be thinking about is how, when a situation like this happens, bullying. And right now I have a 3rd grader who's also going through it, and he's been coming home every day crying about it, and I'm thinking, how do I handle this effectively as a parent, and how do I talk to educators and teachers and help us as educators equip parents to handle it better too. And so what I want us to really talk about today first is what are the challenges. And then we're going to talk a little bit about defensive posturing and what in the world happens when parents come in and want to talk to us, and what in the world we can do to get out of it. But one of the things, right, not get out of it, we want to talk to them, we want to do it effectively. One of the things we know research-wise is this, that we're just not really well equipped to do this. Right? I think our hearts are in the right place. I mean, I think as educators, I think as parents, we want bullying to stop. And we have the best interest of everybody in mind, not only the victims of bullying, but the bullies themselves. Because what we also know from a communication standpoint is that hurt people, right? And so we have to find a way where we can not only deal with stopping the bullying, but even empowering individuals or students who might actually be bullies. And so we need to figure out ways that we can do that effectively. This is also a reality, and so we're going to talk about some real truisms here today. Parents don't always act the way we think they should act, right? And so we're equipped to handle them in a way that we think they should be acting, and then they come in and they act a completely different way. One of the things I want to challenge us as educators is that we have to believe that parents are doing the best they can, right? They may not be doing the best, they may not be doing it the way we would do it, and it might not really be right, but in their hearts they're doing it the best way that they know how to do it. And so we have to approach communication from that particular standpoint. Possibly. This is also another realism, and I know this because I'm a teacher too, but sometimes we just don't want to bring parents in because we think that they might be part of the problem, right? And we do know, some of the research does tell us that children who bully in schools actually have learned that behavior from home. But what we also know from the literature, and if anybody had the pleasure of listening to Dr. Espialage this morning or Dr. Patchen later on in the morning, they also talked about this phenomenon that it's really not just kids that come from dysfunctional homes that are bullying. It's the popular kids. And it's a status issue. And so kids want to fit in. And so sometimes that means that they have to do things that they don't want to do. So the bottom line is we have good kids doing bad things. And so we really have to pay attention to that. And so we have to bring parents in. If we want to be successful at stopping bullying, we have to realize that it's not just this isolated incident. There are larger things going on. Things in the home, things with their siblings. We had a student not too long ago who was saying that, oh, well, you know, I bully all the time. And he said, I bully my little brother. And so we asked him, well, what do you think's happening when your little brother goes to school? Oh, he's probably bullying people at school too. Yes, he probably is, right? So we need to pay attention to the larger systems and realize that when we start talking about bullying, we all have these different frames, and we're going to come in with these different frames and have different issues as educators than parents and how we want to address those. But we also know this to be true, right? Parents may perceive that the school or the educators are not doing their best, or that they don't have their kids' best interest in mind. How many of you experienced that? Okay. Here's what I can tell you, and it's somewhat discouraging, but hopefully we can get outside of that and we'll talk about some strategies. But oftentimes when children go home, they will say, I'm being bullied. And a parent might ask, well, what did the teacher say? What did the supervisor say? And the child will say, well, nothing at all, or they told the person to stop. What's oftentimes happening is that as educators, we're doing the best we can, right? We think we're stopping it. We've addressed it. We've talked to supervisors on the playground. We've talked to teachers. We've talked to principals. We think we've addressed it. Do you think the kids think you've addressed it? Not if it happens again. But even if it doesn't happen again, what students are saying repeatedly in the research is that they just don't think it's being handled effectively. And so when we go back and we ask, well, why not? It's because teachers aren't doing follow-up. We're not going back to those students and saying, you know what, I took care of that for you. Or maybe I didn't take care of it for you, but you know what, I talked to them. And I'm with you, right? My responsibility is to you, and I'm going to be here, so if you happen to have this experience again, come back to me. And you wouldn't believe the amount of response that you're going to get from kids. And they'll go home and say, yeah, this teacher's really helping me. And you may not have stopped it at all, but they feel like you stopped it because you listened, right? And it's that follow-up that we really have to keep doing. Right. So what can we do? We're going to do some simple stuff. We're going to do some hard stuff. 2 things. Well, there's 4 things up here. Let's put them up. Realize, first of all, that oftentimes parents are only invited to school when bad stuff happens, right? So what do you think a parent is going to be thinking when they say, oh, you need to come in again because so-and-so did X, right? We're starting to develop this thing called defensive communication, defensive climate. Because now a parent, and I'm a parent, and I will tell you, and we all have it. If you're a parent, how many of you are parents? How many of you have the if you mess with my kid, you're in trouble syndrome, right? We've got it. We can't help it. And so we're defensive. And there's a lot of literature out there, and I cringe every time I read it, but a lot of the literature blames bullying on parents, and they lay a lot of that responsibility on us, right? But sometimes good kids do bad things, and so it's not just bad kids from bad homes. It's good kids doing bad stuff because they feel like they have to fit in. So we've got to keep coming back to that. Oftentimes when parents come in and they're angry, and they are usually angry, they're anxious, they're confused, they want answers, they only have their kid's side. Now I know from a 3rd grade perspective I didn't get it all. But I also know better because I do research in this area, but I know a lot of parents who take that story as that's the truth. And that's what we're going to come in and we're going to talk to teachers about. So what we need to do as educators is 2 things. Show them that you care about their student. Right? Validate their concerns. And all you really have to do, and this is this magical thing that says, I hear you. Right? I'm listening and I hear you and I'm going to do my best to help you. I don't know what it can be, but the other truth is that we have to know what we can and cannot do. Right? A lot of times parents are going to come in, they're going to say, I want you to suspend so-and-so. Right? I want so-and-so's parents brought in and I want you to do. Oftentimes, we can't do some of the things parents want us to do, and that's the only thing that they think we're going to be able to do. So what we have to do is pull back and say, here's what I can do for you, here's what I can do for your child, but we have to be realistic. And we have to be brave enough to say, we might not be able to stop the bullying entirely, because it's not this small incident. There are bigger social issues going on with bullying about fitting in and popularity and status. But if we say, I'm here for you and I'm going to try to help you, then we have more of a fair assessment of what we can and can't do, right? But this is, can you all see that? Okay. One of the things I work with a lot in my research is defensive communication. And defensive communication is a really negative climate. And oftentimes it's called this defensive cycle. What happens, especially when we have an episode like bullying, right? It's hurtful. It's not just hurtful for the kids, but if you've ever sat and watched your child cry because they've been isolated on a playground, or they were kicked or punched. I had a student, I hope you all, by the way, I'm going to take a break from that. I hope you all stay for the 3 p.m. session, because I have some students from our research class who are telling these beautiful bullying stories. And they spent a lot of time collecting these bullying stories. These are real life stories. And one little girl tells a story about a time where, as the bully, she forced another girl to eat mud, right? And now I think looking back feels very bad about that, but at the time didn't. But her parents were so angry about this and wanted to know what we were going to do, because the child came home very violently ill and was throwing up after eating mud with a spoon, right? And so these parents come in very angry, and the first thing they want to know is, how are you going to fix this? Well, when somebody comes in, and we call it this attacking approach, that is you, right, with the finger pointed sometimes, what are you going to do? We automatically as educators become defensive, right? And we can't help it, we're human beings. And all of a sudden, we're on the defense. And what do we do when we're on the defense? We're going to attack back. But we're not going to do it, because we've been, I hope, trained at least somewhat that we can't be negative, or we can't bully the parent, right, even though they're going to bully us. But we become defensive. And then we become very tense. And what happens is we might step back, our shoulders are squared, we're going to look angry, and when that happens, there is no hope of positive communication from that point, right? So we have to empower ourselves to not be in that situation, because when we become the defensive educator, that tension happens again, and all we're going to do is keep the cycle going. And then what's going to happen is that they're going to say, well, if you can't help me, I'm going to the principal, if they haven't already been there. And if the principal can't help me, I'm going to the superintendent. And if the superintendent can't help me, I'm hiring a lawyer. I'm doing whatever I need to do. And we don't want it to get to that, and hopefully it never does get to that. But if we can stop it at the human level, I say human level because it's communication, right? Bottom line is what everybody wants is this to stop. We want people to stop hurting. We want bullying to stop. Or if anything else, because it's a very narrow focus, we want our child to stop hurting, right? And so we can do that by breaking the cycle. And it's some simple stuff, and we'll talk about some practical verbal tips here in a few moments. But when that parent comes in angry or anxious and says, what are you going to do to fix it? And they have that attacking approach, and it's tension, it's an educator's goodwill attempt. That means I don't care how intimidated I feel by the parent. And I know I've had some parents, even at the college level, that want to come and have a chat with me. And sometimes it's not always a nice chat. And thankfully, I'm protected more by some regulations of FERPA, and I don't know that you all are. So I don't have to talk to parents if I don't want to. I can say, you need to talk to your adult child. But what I can say is I'm listening to you. I understand what your concerns are, and I understand that we need to, together as partners, figure this out. And we can certainly do that. And you would be amazed, well, no, I'm sure you all had this experience, that when you offer goodwill to somebody, they will become your friend, right? They will think that you are their best advocate, and they will come to you when they need help again. And it's as simple as a smile or telling them that you're listening to them, and that can change the climate. And what we get from that point forward is supportive communication. So we're saying, okay, let's describe this problem. What is the problem? How can we fix it together? And so we get ourselves out of that particular cycle, and we don't have to do the negative stuff, and we don't have to dread when a parent comes in to talk to us, even though there are lots of challenging parents, and we will talk about some of those. I like this because it's education focused, but practice the 3 F's. Sometimes four-letter word fair is the really hardest, I think, for us to deal with. But as educators, there are a couple things that we can do. One, be firm. Right? What's it mean to be firm with a parent? This is a shady ground because we don't want to put them on the defensive. What does it mean? Okay. Yes. And this is the hardest thing to do because sometimes parents will surprise you. You don't know they're coming in, right? If we know that they're coming in, we can have what we might want to call our own plan of attack. But if we don't know they're coming in, we're kind of doing this on the fly. But it is certainly that once you've made a decision, stick with the decision, right? So be firm in that. Say, I know our policy is to stop the bullying. And I know our policy is to be consistent in talking to victims and families and bullies themselves. And then be fair. That's the hardest part. Because sometimes when a parent says, I want this to be fair, what do they think fair means? That's right, fair to their kid, right? And so fair means that kid gets suspended, or that kid needs to go and not be in recess anymore, or that kid needs to be kicked out of the PE class, right? That's not always fair. But what is fair?
Listening to both sides of the issue, not placing judgment, not calling names, not putting anyone down, but listening to both sides.
Okay. Yeah. And a parent sometimes doesn't want to hear the other side, right? And we are also in some shady area because we can't disclose the other side to the parent. But what we can confirm and validate to the parent is that we're listening to their concerns, right? And we're going to be as fair in solving this problem as we can, but fair doesn't always mean that the other person gets punished, right? Or we hope that something happens to help stop the behavior, but it might not be that. And then obviously, let's be friendly about it, right? All right. So, how should we talk? Open, honest, warm, nothing new. Begin on a positive note. I always tell my students this when they do public speaking classes. But when a parent comes in and they're very angry, we need to start with something positive. Not, well, your kid's always been the bully in the class, and you should see him when he's over here and he's throwing pencils or glue or whatever it might be at somebody. We don't want to start that way. So we can start by saying something like, I always really enjoy your student because he has this quality or she has that quality. I am, however, concerned about this incident. And so we want to talk through some positive stuff first. And the positive stuff helps lower that defensiveness that might start to creep in. But we also want to listen. And I do this exercise with my students because we think we listen, but often we hear more than we listen. Right? And so I hear what you're saying, but I might not be listening to what you say, and I might just give this away a little bit. But I always do this exercise with my students. Because we're great spellers, we're not great mathematicians, so we'll go with spelling. If I said the word folk, somebody spell that for me. Like a folk story. F-O-L-K. Okay, if I'm going to poke you today, how would you spell that? If I asked you to spell the white part of the egg, what would you say? How would you spell it? You did not listen to me. Did anybody catch what I just did to you?
A-L-B-U-M-E.
The albumin, right? What just happened? Yeah, I know I kind of tricked you there because the white part of the egg is not the yolk, but you were going with the flow. And oftentimes what we hear is this whole, I'm on a rhyme, I'm on a roll. I think I heard what you said, but I didn't really listen to what you said, right? And so we need to pay attention to that. I just spent some time, I don't know if it was our class or not, we talked about implicit personality theory. Not that we talked about this. Implicit personality theory is this. And our students, and I'm going to pick on you all a little bit, but they do this fun thing that's like, did you take that instructor? They all like me, that's why they're here, so I can pick on them. Like, did you take that instructor? What'd you think? Was she good? Was she bad? Right? Was she boring? Was she hard? And they'll do this. And what happens is this, and I always tell them, be very cautious with this, because if you get, oh, she's happy and she's warm, fill in the blank. What else might I bet you if I'm happy and warm? Easy? Maybe a little bit. Okay. Happy, warm, easy. What else? Caring. I'm a woman. Now we're doing some gender stuff here going on. Okay, but I'm probably friendly, I'm caring, I heard those. Now, let's flip that around. She's kind of hard to understand, kind of rude sometimes. What else am I? Grumpy? Oh, I got problems with my shirt. Okay, what else am I? Grumpy? I don't care. You're not going to learn anything. Notice how we do that, right? It's implicit personality theory, and we as educators do it to parents. Parents do it back to us. And so we decide to fill in the blank. And we all have those parents, I know we do, that you're like, oh my gosh, they're coming in again. They're coming in again, right? Or you have the parent that comes and you're like, oh my gosh, yes, it's that parent. Because there are some good parents out there, right? There are some good parents, and we like dealing with them. Did you guys just laugh? You know, I was saying, because I have to tell you, I have some Matt Toon teachers here too, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, did I ever act inappropriate? Because now I'm talking to them about, I hope I haven't ever acted inappropriate. But listening involves a whole lot more than just hearing sounds, right? It involves our perceptions and how we go into an encounter thinking about those people in general. Because if we go into this encounter saying, oh, that's a really difficult parent, and so had a hard time with him, and they told me to beware, you're already defensive. And they're going to read it. Yeah.
I was thinking while you were talking that I also, in my experience, parents base the experiences on their own experience as well. So
Absolutely.
when they went to school, how the teachers treated them or treated their
Mm-hmm.
parents, and if they didn't have a good experience with that, then they assume that their kids,
Yes.
and if they go in, they're on the defensive already, because I know,
Mm-hmm.
my child told me the truth, and the teachers are
Yes.
lying, and they base it on their own experience, maybe from their childhood.
Oh, absolutely. It's our frame of reference, right? And our frames of reference color the world in so many unique ways. And, you know, I tell my students all the time, there are 26 of us in a room typically at any given time, and there are 26 different ideas about what's going on. If I were to ask each of you, write a paragraph about what you heard today, I guarantee you there would be a different paragraph for all of you, and it would all be truth, right? It's truth because perception is more truthful than sometimes facts and reality, right? Because if we perceive it's happening, it's real. And so that's what we have to pay attention to. And so we have to find a way to really listen. And that's a struggle, because sometimes we're bound and determined that parent's going to be a tough parent. Or this parent might be an uninvolved parent. We're going to talk about those types in a moment. But one of the ways that we get out of the defensive communication is we have these terms called confirming messages and disconfirming messages. And I'm a firm believer that messages, again, because we have this axiom, one cannot not communicate, that confirming messages don't always happen verbally, right? Sometimes they happen non-verbally. And so if you watch kids in the playground, they're disconfirmed, and I don't want to say playground, I'm talking about lunchroom and hallways, you name it, are disconfirmed continuously because they want to hang out with a certain group of kids, and those kids will walk by and look at them and turn the other way, right? That is a disconfirming messages, right? Confirming is anything that makes us feel like we're valued and we're important. Disconfirming, anything that makes us feel like we're not valued and we're unimportant. And every time we feel that we're being disconfirmed, we're going to be on the defensive. And it makes it so much harder to deal with this really difficult topic of bullying. And so whenever we can, we give confirming messages. And they're simple things like, if I hear you correctly, I think this is what you are saying. Don't ever say, I know what you're saying and it's this, but you say, let me go back and paraphrase to you. Are you saying this? And I think a parent will go, no, that's not what I said at all. And then you think, whew, I'm glad I asked because I was certain that was what you said, but okay, tell it to me again. And most times, even the angriest parent will take the time. If you show them that you're willing to listen, they're going to take the time to retell it to you. Sometimes it's just that nonverbal eye contact and a nod. I understand, right? We have sympathetic listening. We have empathetic listening. And so sometimes we haven't actually experienced what they're going through, but we can certainly, right, sympathize with them. That I know this must be difficult for you, you know, and many of us as educators are parents too. And like I said, 3 of my 4 I've sat up at night and cried with them. And the first thing as a parent you want to do is you want to go, I want to go tell that kid stop being mean to my kid, right? But you can't do that. But we can empathize, right, or sympathize and say, I'm with you. and anything that I can do. And we're going to talk about how to equip parents here in a moment. I do want to talk about some things we should never do, and it happens all the time. And I see it because I collect data on this, and parents tell me this all the time. I did this, but I didn't really mean to, but it was because I was angry, right? Began on a negative note, right? And oftentimes, it's the thing that we start with is the you. You need to do this. I don't know about you, but I hate the word when people say, you people. Anybody else hate that? I don't know why it rubs me the wrong way, but when you say you people, I'm on the defensive. I'm like, okay, what did I do wrong? And so we don't want to start with you people or even offer advice, because sometimes parents aren't coming in for advice. They just want to know how it's going to stop. Right? And so we want to not start on the negative note, but we also don't want to do the disconfirming. And I threw those up there for you because disconfirming takes a lot of different forms. Sometimes it's interrupting them, because sometimes parents want to come in and tell you their story. And I've sat with parents who sometimes after about 55 minutes, I say, okay, I need to start speaking now, right, and see what we can do. But they want to be heard, right? They want to be heard, so don't interrupt. Don't ignore, certainly. So as our little exercise proved, don't just hear it, but listen to it. Don't trivialize it, downplay it. This happens quite a bit. And I find as a parent myself, I kind of want to do it, and I know as educators we kind of want to do it. But when a child comes to you and says, so-and-so did this, right? Or a parent comes to you and says, so-and-so did this. How do we trivialize or downplay that? Surely not, yes. I'll tell you, I collected some stories. Families were very gracious. One of my research studies, and some of you are going to probably cringe because you're on sports, but I did a study on parents with children in youth sports. And I asked some families to do some recording of conversations for me, because I was really wanting just to see how it is that parents and kids are talking about sports. Mostly from my own personal experiences, because I have 4 kids and all of them were in sports, and I started doing these behaviors, and I'm like, what? Who is that woman? What is she doing, right? So I wanted to know what in the world I was doing and talking, so it kind of spurred this whole interest. But I had a parent who recorded a conversation, and her son was playing hockey, and he came home and he said, Mom, you wouldn't believe what so-and-so did. He took the hockey stick and he punched me in the stomach with it. She goes, no, he didn't. And it's on tape, right? It's on tape. She said, no, he didn't. He's like, yeah, he did. You know, he's 5th grade, 6th grade. Yeah, he did. And so they went back and forth for a while on the tape. No, he didn't. And so finally the mom decided she's going to rationalize. She's like, well, it was an accident. He goes, it wasn't an accident. She goes, he would not take a stick and hit you in the stomach on purpose, right? And so at the end of this whole conversation, anybody guess what happened? And I have it on tape. This is great. Right. Anybody know what happened? He changed his story. He said, yeah, it was probably an accident, right? And I was close enough to this parent, and I said, you know, I'm not judging. I said, but do you recall the conversation? This person's very close to me. And I said, he changed his story. You wouldn't let him say that the kid punched me. She goes, I didn't do that. I said, you kind of did. She's like, I did not. And so we went back and forth, and I said, do you want the tape? And so I gave her the tape, and she was mortified, right? But the same, I've done the same thing to my kids. So I'm not judging, but I'm saying oftentimes we don't even listen to ourselves, right? We just go and we think we're doing it for the best interest of the child because we want to teach them that kids aren't mean on purpose. And sometimes we trivialize, we downplay, we don't listen. I've also heard it this way: suck it up, right? And I think it was Dorothy Espelage this morning, she said that we have this other cultural saying, it's boys will be boys, right? And now we've got Mean Girls, the film, that kind of, right, I don't know, puts up a prime example of how often girls can be mean and bullies to one another. But oftentimes our first response is, oh, it'll be fine, right? When we say it'll be fine, what ends up happening is the child, and sometimes it's not parents saying it, it's educators, it's other friends saying it, it's not fine because the bullying hasn't been addressed, and it's going to continue to happen. And when we do that from a parent's perspective and we trivialize and downplay it and say, well, I was there and it didn't really happen the way that your kid said it happened, which we do, right, then that is going to create and continue that defensive cycle. And so we certainly don't want to trivialize, downplay. Don't want to change the subject or display anger or aggression. That's the nonverbal side. And we sometimes do that with the scowl on our face, the defensive posturing. If you want to anger a parent, sit back and close your arms, right? What does that do? And we do it. It's protective. Okay. Yeah, we know from the communication studies, right? And you probably didn't know it was all from communication studies, did you? Nonverbal communication. When you close your arms, it's symbolic for, I'm done. There's a barrier between you and I won't listen to anything else you have to say. And a parent, even if they're not skilled in that, will pick up on that. And that's where that cycle continues. And so we have to be so aware of how it is that we're using our own body language, right? So don't display aggression. The one that always, I think, tips the parent over the iceberg is not just that defensive posture, but it's the, is that worse? Why is a smile worse when a smile is supposed to be good?
So much a smile as a smirk,
Okay?
which now it can be being closed off, you're being condescending.
Yes, right? Lots of it going on. And so we don't even know we're doing it oftentimes. And that's why I'm trying to point out that we're good, educators, we're good parents. And what we're trying to do is be heard. And sometimes it's just not going our way and we can't even figure out. We'll walk away from an interaction and go, I have no idea how it got out of hand. I have no idea. And it's the small behaviors like that, that leaning back, the closing the body off, the smiling or smirking when we didn't even know we were doing it. And so it's always a conscious awareness of our own behaviors. What are we doing as educators unknowingly that sometimes continues that defensive cycle? So we've got to be really, really careful, right, in that. This is my favorite. Defensiveness gets displayed outwardly in our actions even when we don't think it does. Okay, so if we're on the defensive, guarantee yourself that you're showing it outwardly and you don't even know how you're doing it. But those positive interactions, like I said, are extremely difficult to achieve once that defensiveness occurs. And you're going to see 4 different types of parents, and the more defensive your posture, the worse they're going to behave. But we do have the parent bully. The parent bully is always very interesting to me because they have to have control in a parent-teacher encounter. What do you think the best strategy is there when they want control? But don't sit back defensively, right? Yes. They want control. They want to be heard. And so you're probably best suited to sit back and take a listen to what they have to say. Huh?
Just let them talk.
Yes. But in the end, not just let them talk, but we have to assure them in the very end that I heard it, I listened to it, and now what should we do? And that's what you want to do. What should we do? And it's okay to defer to that parent to say, I don't really know, because obviously they have something in mind, right? It may not be the best solution, but you listen to it first and you say, okay, well, I think we could probably do that first part, but I don't know about the second part, so what else could we do? The negative parent, this one's a little bit different strategy, all defensive, but they don't believe anything's going to work. Anybody had the negative parent? Oh, we've tried that. That's not going to work. Oh, I tried that one too. It's not going to work. Well, you people said you tried that one and that didn't work, right? What do you do with a negative parent? Throw your eyes around.
Slap them upside the head, but that's enough.
Yeah, that might be defensive and somewhat
I put
bullying.
I put the ball back in their court. If everything we say is not the right answer, then I ask them, what do you think would be some, solutions or a direction that we could go in?
Okay.
And kind of put the power back in their hands to brainstorm.
Yeah. And they're probably going to tell you that won't work either, but okay. No. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so at least coming equipped with, here's what we are going to do, right?
Or try it for a certain period of time. If it doesn't work, try something else.
Yes. All we have to do is have a plan of action. And a negative parent will say, well, I'll give it a try, but it probably won't work. But we be supportive and say, well, it might not, but at least we're trying something. And I am a firm believer that awareness brings change, right? And sometimes it might take forever. And we're saying the same thing, but it's called planting a seed. And I tell parents that, plant a seed. And it may not change for a year. It may not change for 2 years. Well, hopefully it doesn't take that long, right? But let's plant a seed today. And we can do that together, right? And so I think there's at least that sprout of hope going on. I don't know. I kind of like the know-it-all parent because they could do your job and they'll tell you they can, right? You all have that parent? right? They know what's going to work. They know what you are doing wrong, and they would fix it if they were in that position, right? How do you handle a know-it-all parent? Got to work on the defensive posturing, right? Right? This parent wants you to validate them. They need, I'm a parent too, so I can say it, we need our ego stroked, right? We do. And sometimes you can grit your teeth and you know, I'm going to do that for you, right? And say, you know what? You've had some really great ideas. And I think if we haven't tried this one, we could possibly give that one a try. It's worth a shot, right? Because maybe you have done everything they said. And you could say, you know what? You brought up something really interesting. You said that we didn't try this, but you know, we didn't really try it exactly the way you said to do it. But I like that. So walk me through that. What would that look like? And you will see them brighten up. They'll say, well, and they're going to tell you. Doesn't mean you have to do every single thing, but you can certainly implement some of their stuff. And they probably will have some good ideas. I mean, I think at some point in their lives they have to have good ideas or they wouldn't think they knew everything, right? And then we have the uninvolved, the uninformed parent. I don't know if those are the worst or the best. I don't know. The uninformed parent, I think I can work with a little bit more because, like I say, let me bring you up to speed about what we're doing in the school, what has been happening, and oftentimes, like I said in the very beginning, what you have done and what a child sees that you have done are two very different things, right? And so what happens is you may be working very hard for that kid, and you have seen a ton of progress in maybe the bully victim or the bully's behavior, and we're trying to support that. And it's not stopped yet, but you're seeing the progress. But that poor kid's not seeing the progress, right? And he didn't see what you did, and so he's going home and saying this is still going on. And so a parent gets very angry, and they come back in. So we can inform them. And we can say, well, and this is where documentation comes in. You all know that. Document everything, right? Even if it's a small thing, the kid came in, and he was crying in the bathroom, and I said it'll be okay. Write it down. Because when that parent comes in, you can say, here's everything I did do. And I want you to know I really have your kid's best interest at heart, and I'm trying my best. But if you and I can come up with a solution to do it better, let's do it. The uninvolved parent probably is the most difficult to reach, though, right? One, because they don't know how to do it, or they come from that generation, like you said, sometimes that they've never really, I don't know if it was that they didn't really ever come in before, or they had bad experiences when they were kids, and so they're fearful. Right? And it's real, right? As adults, we're still fearful sometimes of authority. And if we had a really bad experience when we were in school, we just assume that our kids are going to have the same thing and they just need to grin and bear it. And so there's nothing in the world that we could possibly do, so we're just not going to get involved, right? And so that is something that we really need to pay attention to. Those are the parents that we have to reach out to probably a lot more often to get them to want to come in. But I will tell you, I'm going to sing praise to Mattoon High School just for a second, and pardon me if Mattoon Middle School did it, but this last 2 years, I've gotten these phone calls from teachers. And I know that my kids are good, a little bit of a pat on the back, but I know they're good kids. I know they can be mischievous too. So I got this phone call, and they said, this is so-and-so from Mattoon High School. I'm calling about, named my child, and I thought, that's interesting. I didn't really think it was bad, so I thought, that's interesting. They called to tell me what a great job the kid was doing, right? I thought, what a beautiful sentiment, right? That you could call and say, your kid's not in trouble, but I really appreciate what your kid did in class, right? And that this kid goes above and beyond, is very attentive in class, makes the other kids laugh, makes them feel comfortable in the classroom, and I thought, that's something a parent should always hear. And so I will email them back, thank you, you made my day. And I really mean it, you made my day. Because I know that my kid feels safe in that school. And I know that as a teacher, you're watching out for my kid. And sometimes, with the uninvolved parent, you just need to do it. Sometimes, you may not find a whole lot right that the kid's doing, right? But we go back to this whole notion of even the kids, when they seem like they're just mean and we want to do away with the kids, right? We just wish they would go to another school. And that happens. We're human beings. But that kid is crying out, right, in that behavior that I need somebody to validate me that I'm okay. Because they're probably going home and not getting that validation. And that's the hard thing for educators to do, right, is to validate them in the school. Tell them that they're okay. And if they have to go home and they don't get validated there, they can come back and know they're going to do it here. And then reach out to that parent to say, here's what I really like about your child. Yeah,
I was the principal of an alternative program, and I gave all of my teachers postcards. And I said, at least once a month, if not 2 or 3 times
Yeah.
a month, I want a positive postcard to go home on every child in that classroom. Because I said,
Yeah.
if nothing else, if he doesn't get it at home, well, and I hope there's no postal workers in here, they're gonna get mad at me. The postal
Keeping them in a
carrier
job.
is going to read that postcard,
Mhm.
and everybody in the neighborhood is going to know, that kid got a good news postcard.
Yeah.
You know, so,
Yeah.
there may be neighbors in the neighborhood who, I hear you got a good news postcard, and that's great. And that helped
Yeah.
us more than
Yeah.
anything when we had to bring a parent in, because
Yes.
we had already had
Yeah.
positive communication.
Yes.
You know, so that we could then say, look, we know it, but here's what we need to do.
Yeah. Well, and I will say a lot of the teachers do that for the kids' perspectives. Like my kids have gotten plenty of those postcards that say, I'm so excited, I saw your name on my roster and I'm looking forward to you coming into the class. And the other cards, we don't see it to the parents quite as often, so I love the idea. And I've spoken to many a parent that has said that just changes everything. Because when they come into a school and they know it's this safe zone to talk about whatever issues a parent is having, they feel accepted, they feel valued, and they can come in and talk about their concerns. But if they're only getting those calls when their kid does something wrong, obviously they're going to be defensive, right? And that's the only thing they can do. They're that child's parent. And when you attack the child, you attack the parent. And that's what we do, is we become very defensive, right? And so just trying to navigate those different types of parents, and this is certainly not exhaustive of the different types of parents we find, but I figured in 50 minutes, we hit the bigger points. But all of these parents have needs, yeah.
So what would be your recommendation on how to deal with a parent whose child is getting bullied, but the child is a completely innocent of also
Yes.
bullying, or maybe not necessarily bullying, but they do things that trigger other kids, that
Yes.
trigger those behaviors, like, for example, staring.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not really bullying, but they're doing kind of an aggressive.
Oh, it's an
behavior
emotional
that-
bullying, absolutely,
Right.
yeah.
So those, to me, I find are difficult conversations to have with parents, because they're right, their child's getting bullied, and
Yes,
I'm sure that the bullying that's happening to them isn't equal to what they're doing, but it's still,
yes.
you know what I'm saying? Like, how do you manage that
Yeah.
conversation?
I have talked to a lot of parents about this, and there's, I think, misperceptions or at least hopeful perceptions of our own kids that oftentimes parents believe. And I've been there. I have a good kid who was caught name calling once, and I was traumatized. And I thought, you know better than that. I'm like, I don't even know what in the world you were thinking. And I was so upset by that. And I got that information from a teacher, right? That I thought, and so it was a hard conversation, but I really respected that truthful conversation to say, and that's what we do, is we say, I know your child is a good kid. Good kids do bad stuff. But kids are not going to come home and go, hey mom, I did this, right? They're going to lie. And I hope you stick around for the student presentation, because they're going to talk about this from multiple perspectives: the bully, the victim, the teacher, the parent. And there are some powerful stories. I don't know what they're all going to share, because they collected multiple stories. They're trying to blend many voices. But the two stories that stand out when we collected these stories last year are two things, and they're from both bullies, and they talk about their parents. And one said, and it was the girl who forced the little girl to eat the mud, and she said, we were the popular kids, and the teachers loved us, right? Teachers loved us. And we all know that we love certain students, and she said, we got away with everything. And we were brought into the principal's office, and we were asked, did you force her to eat mud? No, we tried to stop her. We tried. We told her, no, that's gross, don't do it. They didn't. Of course, they were forcing her, right? And she's admitting this, and she said, we were told, if you did it, don't do it again. We were sent back. We laughed about it and said, oh. She's like, we didn't stop the bullying, right? Another bully story, though, said he did a lot of things in a skating rink, and they pretended to be a friend of a little boy's and humiliated him in public and did all kinds of crazy things on a little field trip. And they were brought in, and the principal and the teacher and the parent sat down and said, here's the impact you had. And I want you to think about, if this were you, how humiliated you would have felt. And they laid down some harsh, not harsh, but harsh consequences. He had to go publicly apologize to the boy. He even had to do community service type work in the school in terms of creating things about how people shouldn't bully and talk to other friends about why they shouldn't bully. And you know what he said? I never did it again, right? So you've got, if we hold them accountable, and sometimes it's hard to have that conversation with parents to say, your child is doing this. And I'm not saying it to be mean, but what I'm saying is that I know they're being bullied. But sometimes that bullying behavior is happening because they are part of the instigation of it happening, right? And if a parent is willing to truly listen and really want to work this out, they're going to listen to what you say. It's not always going to happen. You are still always going to have those parents who are angry with you and they're going to storm away. Can't do anything about those parents. But the ones that are truly committed are going to do something different, right? We don't have a whole lot of time, but a couple things, best practices for talking to parents. These are what can come up continuously in the research. I also wanted to point out this social emotional learning form that I had passed out. But one, respect the parent, encourage them to ask questions. Number 3 is a big one. It's part of confirming messages, but defer to them as the authority at home, because that's where their kid's going to learn it, right? That's where their kid's going to learn how to be socially aware and are going to start making better decisions as if it happens in the home. Assist the parent in problem solving. Keep focused on the issue at hand. Don't bring up something they did 2 years ago, right? It's whatever issue is right in front of you, keep it there. Highlight positive aspects, all these things we've talked about. And then, this is the hardest for educators, encourage them to increase their contact with you. Sometimes we just want them to go away. But what we know is this, that the more contact we have, the more positive that contact can be, and the better off the kids are in the school system. And this link that you have, or this sheet you have in front of you, is from the, part of a new initiative, but the Illinois PTSA organization, and they have teamed up with a lot of different organizations to try to bring some of these social emotional learning strategies into the homes. And let me see if I can click on it. Like I said, I've been part of PTA. I don't have a child at the middle school anymore, and high school doesn't have a PTA or a PTO, but I've been involved at the grade school level, the middle school level, the high school level at various years, and I absolutely love doing it, and I would encourage any parent to do it because you get to know the teachers, and you get to know the curriculum, and you get to know the kids in the schools, and I think that students really enjoy that. But the PTA has also jumped on this initiative for social emotional learning and have recognized all the benefits of that, like emotional well-being, mental health, and well-being from the child's perspective, and just teaching them to be good citizens, right? Good global citizens with kids who might be different than they are, and just talking to kids. Like I said, it's all about planting the seed, and I love that the PTA has taken on this initiative. And one of the things they're helping support, and I don't know if any of you have seen this or not. I can get over there. Here we go. Have any of you seen this? It's the new campaign. It's called Raising Caring, Confident, and Capable Kids. Brand new campaign. They just decided in early 2012 they're going to initiate it, so it hasn't fully come out yet. But I hope that if you have active PTAs or PTOs in your schools, that you're going to start seeing some of this literature come through. But a delegation from the 2009 PTA conference actually committed to bringing these social emotional learning strategies into the homes and have made a commitment that they're going to start spreading these documents to all the different schools, and hopefully principals and educators can jump on board and help start equipping parents to do that. Let me see if I can get out of those really quick. But if you're interested in that, I just want to get to those really quick because I know we're out of time. But anyway, so that kind of, if you're interested in that, I gave you the sheet. It kind of talks about what that initiative is and how they're bringing it to families. So it's not just educators learning about it, but again, it's educators and parents as partners. And if anything else, what we need to do as educators is equip parents to do this at home. Because sometimes, like I said, parents are well-meaning, but they just don't know what to do. And so when we frame this in terms of bullying, here are the 7 things that we can do, talking point-wise, to tell parents what you can do with your kids at home, right? Back to listening. You don't have to give them the little egg white, right, scenario, but certainly listen to what your kids are saying, ask questions, get the details. And number 4 is very important, right? Provide their assurance that you're going to work with them. Don't tell them to suck it up. Don't brush it off. Say it's not important, because to that child it is important. 5 and 6 are something that come up repeatedly in the research, that kids are terrified. And I will tell you this, out of the more than 100 stories and stuff that my students collected, 90% of the kids said, I didn't tell my mom or dad because they were afraid. They were afraid of the way mom and dad would respond. They were afraid mom and dad would run straight to the school and make it worse, right? And so number 5 is important. We need to tell the parents, ask your kids what you want them to do or what they want you to do. Because if they say, don't you dare call my teacher, then you need to respect that and talk to them, what do you want me to do? Sometimes I just want you to listen. Number 6 is really important, though, and this is, I hear parents say this all the time. I tell my kid, if that kid hits you again, nail him, right? I thought, we know what that's called, right? It's called bullying the bully. You all heard that term, right? Don't ever promote bully the bully, right? Although it seems like it would fix the problem because we can intimidate them now, but all we've done is flipped it. But what's going to happen, and what we do know, again, from the research is this, that kids oftentimes that try to stand up for themselves get bullied so much worse because now we're going to bring in a big old gang against them, right? And they better watch out. And so it just escalates from there. But we certainly don't want them to walk away and take it either. And so we have to empower the kids, and we have to say, you find a way to either stand up for yourself. I didn't talk about peers in here, but certainly I hope some of you got to hear some of the other speeches about the upstanders. We don't want to be bystanders anymore, but we want to be upstanders, that as we stand up and create a supportive peer culture where none of us are going to take bullying anymore. But then also encourage your kids, right, as parents to talk to supervisors. And as educators, and we keep talking about this, and our theme this year, by the way, is beyond awareness. And what we know is that we know bullying happens, we know the profiles were wrong, that it's not just dysfunctional kids from dysfunctional homes that are doing it, it's good kids doing it too. And we know that oftentimes educators are trying to do the best they can, but they still don't know what to do and what the best strategy is. But the best strategy is this. Listen and say, I'm going to work for you as hard as I can. I don't know what it's going to look like. It might get ugly. It might be messy. I might make mistakes, but I'm going to work as hard as I can for you. And a kid will walk away happy every time. And a parent will walk away happy most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. Right? So I think we're pretty much out of time. But this is our theme, Bridge Voices, so I hope that you at least can take something from that. If nothing else and you're interested about the PTA stuff, I'd be happy to chat with you about any of that, since I have been a part of that for many, many times. But I'm hopeful that we bring that to some of the local schools. So thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoyed the conference.